Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing the 1997 film I Know What You Did Last Summer as suggested by these lovely subscribers here. Also be discussing the 1998 sequel, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Starting off, it's 4th of July in Southport. Southport is a small seaside town. We don't get to meet any of our main characters just yet, but we do get to meet a mysterious man who looks very disgruntled on the edge of a cliff. The man looks very sad and he's like sitting there fiddling with a keychain. So now we're at the Croaker Queen pageant where we meet our main characters. So we have Julie, Ray, and Barry, and they're watching the 4th member of their squad, Helen, perform in the Croaker Queen pageant. The group consists of 2 couples. First, we have Julie and Ray. Julie is planning to go to college in Boston. Ray is planning on going to college in New York. And similarly, we have Barry and Helen. Barry is planning on going to school in Boston, and Helen is planning on going to school in New York. So they're watching Helen compete, and Ray, which mind you is Julie's boyfriend, is talking about Helen's breast. And if I were Julie, I would be like, go be with her then. Go marry her then. Go star as Fred and Daphne in the live action Scooby-Doo duology. Helen ends up winning the pageant because, you know, she's that girl. After the pageant, Julie and Helen go to Ollie's Oyster Bar where they run into Max. Max is very clearly into Julie. He offers Julie a drink and then offers to take her out before she goes off to college. It's clear to us that Julie is uninterested, and mind you, she's with Ray, so it's like, why would she want to go off with Max? But Julie looks to Helen for help, and the way that Helen breaks eye contact with Julie and basically saying, bitch, you're on your own, Julie does politely tell Max no. Then Max starts going on a tangent about how they've been friends for a really long time and how like they should be going out and stuff. Ray and Barry arrives, and Barry kind of interrupts the interaction between Julie and Max, and he takes a shot but then escalates the situation by shoving Max. It was giving very much the lady said no, which is like we can appreciate, but it was just too much for the situation. And it's very clear that Barry had already been drinking, so it just seemed like a bad situation. A little fight breaks out between Barry and Max, but Ray jumps in and kind of de-escalates the situation. And from there, Helen suggests that they go to Dawson Beach. So the 2 couples are at Dawson Beach and they're telling ghost stories, and at some point the couples kind of break off and they're both just talking about their futures. Like you have Helen, for example, she's talking to Barry and she's basically mapping out the years to come in their relationship. And then you have Julie and Ray, but Julie is more so concerned about their relationship because they're going to be going long distance because, like I said, she's going to school in Boston and he's going to be going to school in New York. Ray, of course, assures her that everything is going to be fine. At some point, Julie takes off her little cover up and Ray is like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, did I miss something? Because since when did taking off your sweater mean, oh, we're about to hook up? Maybe that's their little signature thing where maybe it's like, Julie's like, if you ever see me take off my sweater, just know it's about to go down. And I don't know why they thought it would be a good idea to have sex on the beach. Like for me, I just imagine there's chafing. So now everybody's ready to leave the beach and Barry is fucked up, like drunk as shit. As a group, without even speaking, they just nominate Ray to drive because he's sober and he hasn't been drinking. And we absolutely love that. Please don't drink and drive. I'm just letting you know now, that is the last smart thing that we see these characters do. So Ray is driving and Barry is doing too much. As like a drunk passenger, I feel like it's your job to just sit down and shut the fuck up. Like it's like one thing to be obnoxious, but Barry is doing too much. At some point, Barry stands out of the sunroof with his bottle and he's drinking. He drops the bottle back into the car. Of course, this distracts Ray and Ray literally hits somebody. And if you're ever in a situation like that where there's a drunk person distracting the driver, have the driver pull over and y'all can just sit, regroup, put a seatbelt on the drunk that's causing the problem, and then proceed on driving to your destination. So Ray hits somebody, the car is spinning out of control, and at first the group thinks that they've hit a deer, perhaps a dog, but we of course know that is not the case. Julie is looking around the area and sees that there's a bloody boot, and I just know in that moment everybody was like, please God, let there be a deer that's wearing boots out here. Let there be a deer that's just boots the house down, just wearing boots, just all 4 of his legs boots. So the group goes to investigate to try to find a body because now there's a bloody boot, which means that there has to be a bloody body nearby. And so they find said body and Ray checks for a pulse and he's sure that the man is dead. So Julie, our girl, our main girl, probably the smartest one out of the group, I will say, is like, hey, let's call an ambulance. And Barry is not having this at all. Barry tells Julie, we can't call the cops. He's already dead. And if we call the police, then we are fucked. And I really feel for Julie in this situation because there's nothing worse than being in an already tense situation and then people start speaking French, because I'm like, Barry, this we you speak of is fucking crazy. When did this become a group project? Like, take my name off the fucking assignment. I was writing passenger. I don't understand where this we you speak of. I don't understand how that applies. And Julie is like, no, we're not going to get in trouble. It was an accident. He was walking out here in the middle of the night. And Julie, talking to Ray, is like, you weren't drinking. You were doing the speed limit. We'll be fine. We just need to call the cops. And then here goes Ray talking about they're never going to believe that there's alcohol all over the car. And they will never believe that I was the one that was driving. And Barry is like, the car is in my name. They're going to think that I was driving. Y'all sound drunk right now, honestly, because that just doesn't make any sense to me. It makes sense that they would nominate the most sober driver to drive, the person who wasn't drinking to drive. And let's say the cops get there and the cops are like, no, he was driving. How would they prove that? How would they prove that Barry was driving? How could they dismiss that Ray was the driver? They wouldn't be able to do that. And so Helen is team Julie, and she's like, let's call the cops and tell them the truth. They'll believe us. And now Ray is speaking French, and he was like, we're looking at manslaughter. And Barry is basically saying that they should just get in the car and leave. And Julie is like, no, that'll be a hit and run. They'll find his body. There'll be traces of your car on him and traces of him on your car. Like, that's a hit and run. That's an even bigger charge. And then Barry has a great idea to dump the body. And now Ray is in his Dexter era, apparently. And he's saying the currents may take the body away and there may not be any evidence that this happened at all. They'll clean up the car and that'll be that. When Ray says that the currents could be strong enough to take the body away, Helen looks at Julie a little hopeful, like, see girl, we might just be able to get away with this shit. As they're deliberating, a car approaches and they see that it's Max. Before Max is able to see the body, Ray and Barry move the body off to the side of the road, and then Julie goes over to him to kind of distract him from what's going on. Ultimately, she gets rid of Max. Once Max drives away, they move the body into Barry's car and drive to a dock, and as they're carrying the body to the edge of the dock, Ray is like, oh, if we're lucky, a shark will eat him. Maybe I'm crazy and maybe I'm tripping. I couldn't imagine being in a situation like this, and my first thought is, what's gonna happen to me? I feel like my first thought would be like, is this person okay? Can we resuscitate? What can we do in this moment to help before the ambulance gets here? And then what's gonna happen to me would be a second thought. I have the stranger's body on the edge of the dock, and Julie makes a fabulous suggestion. This is more of a hindsight suggestion where it's like, if you look back at it, it would be like, oh, that would be a totally smart thing to do. But Julie says, maybe we should check his ID. Everybody is completely against it. They're like, we just want to dump him and get up out of here. So when it comes down to dumping the body, Ray all of a sudden grows a conscience and he's like, I don't think I can do it. And so Helen is like, okay, I'll do it. So Helen starts to help Barry move the body into the water, and the man is alive and grabs Helen's crown. And as you can imagine, the whole group was just relieved that they didn't kill anybody and that the man survived. I'm fucking with you, that's not what happens. They all collectively dump him into the water. And the man is still holding Helen's crown. So Barry jumps in to grab the crown from the guy, and the guy is like very clearly still alive. So Barry grabs a crown, comes back up, and they're walking away from the dock, and Barry is like, listen, we need to make a pact right now that we never speak about this. At this point, Julie is just over it. And we all know Julie was the main one, really the only one that wanted to call the authorities when the accident happened. Barry grabs Julie by her neck and is like, swear on your life that you're not going to tell anybody. And like, he basically makes her promise not to say anything. And she's just like, yeah, sure, I won't say anything. And let me tell you, if Barry pulled that shit on me, I'm definitely snitching. What? I feel like with Julie and Helen, they especially had no involvement in the accident. And I'm like, you're basically asking me for a favor right now. And you're being really, really mean to me. And I really, really don't like that. And if I were Barry, why on earth would you even want to commit a crime with somebody who doesn't want to commit a crime? Like, if me and my friends were committing crimes and whatnot, maybe not anything like this, but let's say it's like a heist or something, like it's like a Ocean's 4 or a Malli's 4, and one of my four was like, hey, I'm honestly not comfortable doing this, I'm gonna be like, baby, go home. You better not fucking tell anybody, but just go home. So they get into Barry's car and they leave. And we, the audience, as they're driving off, we see the keychain, the same keychain that the man that was sitting on the edge of the cliff was holding. So it's 1 year later, Julie is in Boston for college, and she's preparing to go back to Southport for the summer. And poor thing, she just looks troubled. And wouldn't you, after that previous year? She's giving us Lydia Dietz. She's giving us Wednesday Addams. She's giving me Without Any Concealer. We meet Julie's roommate, Deb, who is an asshole. So from the sounds of things, Deb is going to be dropping Julie off on her way home. Deb is telling Julie that she needs to hurry up so they can leave. And Deb tells Julie, you need to get your tired, ugly ass up. And I wish I was exaggerating, but she literally calls Julie tired, ugly ass. But even with that, Julie seems fond of her. I guess that's just their dynamic, but that could not have been me. I would have like, look, bitch, when you need help uninstalling that braided bob, don't look to me, don't call to me, get somebody else to help you take that shit down, because it won't be me. So Deb drops Julie off, and Julie is having dinner with her mom, and her mom can tell that there's something wrong with her, and her mom flat out asks her if she's doing drugs, and it seems that Julie is also failing out of college, which isn't good, obviously. At some point, her mom presents her a letter, and it's not a letter. Kiddos, it's the letter. Julie opens up the letter and it just simply says, I know what you did last summer. There's no return address, there's no stamp, and we know exactly what the fuck she did last summer. Next day, Julie visits Shivers. Shivers is the department store owned by Helen's family, and she's basically there speaking to Elsa, which is Helen's older sister, trying to get in contact with Helen, who she believes to be in New York. But come to find out, Helen is not in New York, she's there working in the department store. So Julie presents the letter to Helen, and Helen is like, oh my god, but we were so careful. And I'm like, really, bitch? Y'all dumped a live body into the sea. Y'all live in a seaside town, which, like, I'm sure if people who live in a seaside town know how to swim, or the majority of the people that live in a seaside town knows how to swim, and y'all dumped him while he was alive. Julie and Helen end up going to see Barry to see if he has any insight on the letter, and Barry is very clearly unhappy to see them, and we quickly find out that Barry and Helen have broken up. And after Barry tells Helen and Julie they look like shit, he assures them that the letter probably means nothing, and Julie reveals that she knows the name of the man that they hit and dumped. Apparently 3 weeks after the accident, a man by the name of David Egan was found near where they dumped the body, and they classified his death as an accidental drowning. So Max is asking if they've talked to Ray about this, and apparently Ray and Julie have also broken up, and she has not spoken to him since that previous summer, which honestly I wouldn't have spoken to him either, because it's like, why are you putting her in a position like this? Like, if I hit somebody and I had the option to implicate my partner in the accident or not implicate my partner in the accident, I wouldn't implicate them in the accident, huh? Barry remembers that Max was there the night of the accident, so he is certain that Max had seen something and is now taunting Julie. Barry, Julie, and Helen go to Max's job. Barry basically goes and threatens him, and Max is confused and has no idea what the fuck Barry is talking about. As they're leaving the dock, they run into Ray, who is now working as a fisherman, and Ray is basically telling Julie, like, I know you blame me for that night, and Julie, the queen that she is like, no, I don't blame you. I take responsibility for the choices I made that night, but I also just don't want to fuck with you. And she runs away. Like, she literally runs away. I was like, okay, girl, go ahead, skedaddle on out of there then. And sometime after, Max literally gets murdered. He's immediately not a suspect anymore. Immediately murdered. He's murdered by a man wearing a slicker with a hook. And if you don't know what a slicker is, I don't either. I'm kidding. It's basically a raincoat. So then cut to Barry. He's at the gym and he's in there alone, and we kind of hear noises throughout the gym, meaning he's actually not alone. Ooh. Nonetheless, Barry hits the showers. He goes back to his locker, and there is a Polaroid picture of his car, and written on the picture it says, I know. So Barry starts looking around the locker room. He can't see that anybody else is there with him. He returns back to his locker and it's open and his jacket is missing. Barry throws some clothes on. He runs out of the gym just in enough time to see somebody driving off. He assumes this person to be Max.
Oh, yeah.
Chasing the car down, and the car stops and starts driving towards him and ends up hitting him. Barry is in the hospital and he's basically telling Ray, Julie, and Helen what happened, and he's saying that he didn't see whose face it was. He just knows that they were wearing a slicker, and he also points out that Ray owns a slicker, which isn't saying much because they live in a seaside town, so everybody has one. Julie, of course, is trying to call the cops because Barry was nearly killed. Barry is adamant on not going to the cops and suggests that they find out who it is and handle it themselves. So Helen says that it could be a friend or a family member of David Egan trying to get revenge on them, you know, hitting him the summer before and dumping his body the summer before. So that being said, Julie and Helen dip off and they are searching the online library for articles with David Egan. They come across an article from not 1 year ago, but 2 years ago, and they see that David was in a car accident with his fiancée Susie Willis, who unfortunately passed away. But obviously David survived the car accident only to die a year later. And they find the article from the previous year, you know, where they did that hit and run and dumped a body. And they see that David was survived by his mother and his sister Missy. Julie and Helen find the family's address and they go to visit. So they go to the house, they knock on the door but nobody's there, and then they go to the side of the house and they're like peeking through the window and shit, only for David's sister Missy to pop up behind them. Julie, quick on her feet, lies and says that they're having car problems and they just need a phone to call AAA. Missy so graciously invites them inside to let them use the phone, and of course they give her fake names, and Helen pretends to call AAA, and as she's doing so, she runs into a slicker in the house, like hanging off of a coat coat rack. And while she's making her little phone call to AAA, Julie is asking Missy questions. We found out Missy went to the same high school as Julie and her friends, Southport High. And Julie from there is like, oh, your name sounds familiar. Did you have a brother? And Missy explains that her brother passed away and his passing caused their mom to go to a facility to be taken care of. Julie is asking if David had any friends. Missy says that David didn't have many friends, but there was a man by the name of Billy Blue that stopped by sometime after David's passing to give his condolences. Missy says that her and Billy were sweet on each other for some time, but Billy stopped coming around, and she suspects that this is because he was sad about David's death. Julie starts to feel guilty and rushes her and Helen out of the house, and Missy is trying to get them to stay and tells them to come back anytime because she's lonely. Once Julie and Helen get to the car, Julie's apologizing for freaking out. Missy pops up and she's saying that Helen forgot her cigarettes. She notices that they were able to start their car with no problems, even though they just asked if they could use her phone to call AAA. Julie freaks out, drives off. And as Julie is dropping Helen off, Helen is telling Julie how much she misses her. And then somehow she manages to slip it that maybe David wanted to die that night, which could be a reasonable thought process. But also, I feel like she was saying it as more of a way to alleviate her guilt. And from our perspective, that could very well be the case as well, because we see David Egan sitting on the edge of the cliff and he's playing with his little keychain and stuff. So it's like, it's not far-fetched, but it just wasn't, I just feel like that it wasn't an appropriate thing to say or mention, given that they hit him and they'll never be able to know if that were actually the case or not. So Helen goes inside of her home and Helen's dad is giving NPC. Dare I say he's even worse than an NPC, because at least an NPC will speak to you and say something very generic. But Helen's dad doesn't even look her way when she comes in and speaks to him. So Helen goes into the kitchen and she pours herself some soda, and at the front door, the killer walks in. And of course, Helen's dad doesn't notice, not a single thought between those eyes. And the killer goes upstairs and we can assume that he's hiding in Helen's closet. Helen goes upstairs to her bedroom and she puts on her pajamas, which I can only assume she's a morning shower girly, which to each their own, you know? Helen is brushing her hair, getting ready for bed. And as she's doing so, Elsa, her older sister, walks in and she's telling Helen that she needs to be at Shivers at 10 a.m. that next morning. And Helen is explaining that she can't because she has to be in the Croker parade because she won the Croker pageant the following year. And so I guess it's like tradition in their town for the previous winner to be in the parade. And Elsa honestly is just bad vibes all around. She's just telling Helen like, ugh, you and your hair, you're so pathetic. And I'm like, damn, God forbid a girl self-care before bed. So Helen goes to bed and the following morning she wakes up and her Croker Queen crown is on her head. Say that 3 times. And she's touching her head and realizes there are chunks of her hair that have been chopped off. So Helen runs to the mirror to see that her hair has been cut, and written in the mirror says soon. And honestly, compared to Barry, who literally got hit by a car, meh. So Helen calls Julie, and so Julie rushes over to Helen's and she's driving and she's on her way and she hears a strange noise coming from her trunk. So Julie gets out of the car, opens the trunk, and there is Max, who we know to be deceased, covered in crabs, wearing Barry's jacket. As we remember, Barry's jacket was stolen while he was at the gym. So Julie runs to Helen's and Barry is already there inside comforting her, and the 3 of them go out to check out Julie's trunk, and Barry opens the trunk and there is nothing there. The look that Helen and Barry give Julie, bruh, I would have been sick. And Julie is like, no, y'all don't look at me like that. It was there. He must have moved it. Barry is like, why would he do that? And she was like, shit, I don't know. Probably the same reason that he hit you with a car and the same reason that he chopped off Helen's hair. And Julie's like, he's fucking with us. He's watching us. He's waiting. We can't even go to the cops anymore. Julie parts from the group a little bit, takes 3 feet into the street. She puts her arms out and she's like, what are you waiting for? And I would have been like, okay, girl, like calm the fuck down. Don't antagonize him. Let's silently regroup and figure this shit out. There's no need to yell and get the neighbors involved. So the 3 of them walk back to Helen's house and Ray is there waiting for them and he's like, where have y'all been? You know, we're supposed to link up. And without notice, Barry punches the fuck out of Ray. And now he full on suspects that Ray has something to do with what's been going on. And Barry is like, you were always jealous of us because you're poor and we're rich. And Ray was like, I have nothing to do with this. I got a letter. And it's like, in comparison to like finding a body in your trunk, getting your hair cut off, and being hit by a fucking car, getting a letter just didn't seem like a lot. And I understand Barry's concern, Julie delegates and she's like, look, we don't need to be fighting right now. We need to be figuring out who's doing this. So she tells him, let's start off with Billy Blue. Maybe he went to Southport with David Egan. We can look in Elsa's yearbook and see if we can find somebody by the name of Billy Blue, and maybe he is the one who's doing this. They go into Helen's room. They're searching for a Billy Blue, can't find him, and so they come to the conclusion that maybe they were using a fake name, because Billy Blue sounds like a fake ass name. Sounds like somebody's jazz stage name. Sounds like somebody who knows how to play a mean saxophone. And coming to the stage, the harmonican jazz player of the year, Billy Blues. That being said, Julie tells Helen to continue to go to the parade, and she encourages Barry to go with her in case the killer shows up there. While they're doing that, Julie says that she's gonna go back to Missy with the yearbook so she can identify who Billy Blue is. Ray wants no parts of this. He's calling them vigilantes, and he's like, let's just leave out of town. And I'm like, bro, the time to have a moral compass was a year ago when y'all hit a man and dumped his body. It's not now. Now we need to get together and figure shit out. So at the parade, Barry is literally on the float with Helen, and they're trying to spot the killer. And all we know is that the killer is wearing a slicker. They have no other identifying characteristics of the killer, which is not good at all because y'all live in a seaside town. Everybody has a fucking slicker. That's like being in Houston and being like, the suspect is wearing Astros merch. It's everywhere. You're gonna find that everywhere. So meanwhile at Missy's, Julie is asking Missy if she can identify Billy Blue in the yearbook. She's like, just take a look at this yearbook. And Missy now has questions, obviously, because Julie and Helen were acting shady as hell last time they were there. And she's like, what is this about? Who are you? What do you want? And Julie is like, it's too much to explain right now, but I need you to know that David's death was not an accident. And Missy is like, yes, I know. He tried to kill himself. He was grieving over Susie. Everybody blamed him for his death, so he took his life. And Missy says that David left a letter. And Julie asked to see the letter, and Missy says that she never told anybody about the letter, otherwise she would not be able to collect on the insurance. And the letter looks exactly like the letter that Julie received, except it says, I will never forget last summer. Julie is like, no, this is a threat. This isn't a suicide note. And she's telling Missy, like, yo, we killed your brother last summer. And Missy is like, absolutely not. That didn't happen. And Julie says, no, I seen he had a tattoo of Susie's name. Like, I know that that is him. Missy confirms that David didn't have any tattoos. And Julie is like, oh shit, we didn't hit David. So back to Helen and Barry. They're now at the Croaker Queen pageant. And for some reason, I guess this tradition in their town, the winner of the previous year has to sit on stage while the new contestants are performing their talent, which seems like an awkward thing to do. I don't know why she couldn't just be in the front row watching. But nonetheless, while Helen is on stage, Barry is standing in the balcony, kind of checking out the scene and making sure that the killer doesn't show up there, which I'm like, Barry, that is not a good position to be in. I just feel like if he wanted to watch after Helen, she's in like the best possible position because all eyes are on the stage and she is on the stage. And unless we got a buck wild killer on our hands, he's not just gonna jump up there with that many witnesses around. And as Helen is sitting on stage, she looks up and sees that the killer is behind Barry, and the killer attacks Barry. Of course, Helen freaks out. She jumps off the stage and tries to run to him, and she's like, oh my gosh, like somebody help him, he's getting killed up there. And for some reason, nobody follows her glance. Nobody follows where she's pointing. Nobody's really listening to her. Instead, they all kind of crowd around her. And at some point, somebody holds her back. And that would have drove me completely insane. When I tell you, I would have lost my shit. I would have started licking and biting people. I don't know why that's the first thing that comes to mind. But I'm like, ah, like, let me go. He's up there. My man who's no longer my man is up there and I need to save him. So there's an officer there and he's listening to Helen. And so they go up to the balcony together. And the officer basically just does not believe Helen at all. And he is like a shit investigator because literally we, the audience, sees blood dripping off of the banister. So the officer is driving Helen home and he's telling her that Barry must be pranking her, but that he'll follow up with Barry's parents to see where he is. And as they're driving, they see that there is a man having car troubles. So the officer pulls over and he's like, oh, let me check on this guy real quick and make sure that he's okay. He gets out the car, and as the officer is walking towards the man, Helen has already clocked the T that this is our killer. It is in fact the hash slinging slasher. He kills the cop. And so Helen is trapped in the back of the police car. She's in the back seat. She's not able to open the doors from the inside. So she breaks through the window. She manages to run away and she runs to Shivers, and the killer is hot on her ass. Helen makes it to Shivers. The door is locked and she sees Elsa inside, and Helen is like crying, banging on the door, and Elsa's literally taking her sweet fucking time to get the key to unlock the door. And even when she lets Helen in, she's like, oh, what's going on? Like, she's not taking her sister seriously at all. So Helen tells Elsa to lock the doors while she goes to call the police. Elsa goes to lock the back door, but the killer is already inside and she gets killed. And Helen starts walking towards the front door looking for Elsa. And she turns around and there's a mannequin that's looking a little suspicious. Like all the mannequins are covered in plastic and she sees one that catches her eye and she's just staring at it. And I'm like, girl, maybe stop staring at it and just make it out the front door. Pretend that you didn't see what you saw and make it out the front door. Because of course the mannequin that looks suspicious is the killer. And the killer ends up chasing her all throughout the store. And so she jumps out of like the attic window. Helen makes it to the edge of the 4th of July celebration. Like she's right there. But then for some reason she stops, looks behind her, and then turns back and the killer is there. And then she gets killed. Meanwhile, after visiting with Missy, Julie is back on the online library and she is doing some hardcore research. And this time, instead of focusing on David's surviving family, she is looking up Susie Willis's survived family. And she finds out that Susie had a father by the name of Ben Willis, who is a fisherman. And you know those fishermen, they be wearing slickers and shit. Julie runs to the dock and she finds Ray and she's basically breaking everything down for Ray. So Julie is explaining that they did not hit David Egan. She suspects that Ben Willis killed David Egan that night to avenge his daughter, Susie Willis, and they actually hit Ben. And she's saying that Ben is still alive and is the one who's taunting them. So Ray tells Julie to come aboard, and just as Julie is about to get on Ray's boat, she sees the name of the boat is Billy Blue, as in Billy Blue that went to go visit Missy after David Egan's body was found. And Julie's theory and research about Ben Willis completely leaves her brain and she runs away from Ray. She tries to exit the dock entirely, but it's chained up. And so she ends up running in the opposite direction. And as Ray is behind her, he gets knocked out by another fisherman. And Julie tells the fisherman, like, hey, we need to call the police. And Ray starts to wake up and the fisherman tells her to run onto his boat. So she runs onto his boat and she's kind of looking around and she sees a shrine, if you will, of her and her friends. He has like a lock of Helen's hair in there. And we also see a memoriam of Susie Willis. I think we can all guess whose boat this is. So the fisherman outside is undocking the boat. He gets inside. Julie is already on edge. And the man is like, oh, you kids should be out having fun. You should be out here hitting people and dumping their bodies. Julie is like, oh shit, this has been Willis, the man who we left for dead last summer. So Julie runs to the deck of the boat and sees that they're way too far from the dock for her to jump. So Ray finally wakes up and sees that the boat has departed. So he jumps on a little motorboat and jumps aboard Ben Willis's boat. So Julie runs and hides from Ben in what looks to be like the engine room. And now Ray is on board and him and Ben are fighting. Ray ends up getting pushed overboard, but luckily there's a net there and he's able to climb back onto the boat. But at this point, Ben is now chasing Julie and Julie ends up in like this ice room, which I can only assume is to like store fish or something since it's like a fisherman's boat. I don't know. And can you believe I'm a maritime major? Julie finds a ladder and she starts to climb up to get back on the deck level of the boat, and Ben Willis is there waiting for her. But luckily Ray has now made it back onto the boat. He knocks him out and helps Julie up. And I know Julie in this moment was like, oh shit, I kind of fucked up. But it's like, can you blame her? Because Billy Blue? Ben gets back up, backhands Ray with a hook, and just as he's about to strike Julie, his hand gets caught like in some rope. And Crunk, or as we know him as Ray, pulls a lever, sending Ben flying into the air, and Ben ends up severing his hand. Like his hand detaches from his body, and then his body falls into the water. Then we see that Ben named his boat after his daughter, Susie. And as the cops are investigating Ben's boat, Julie is talking to Ray and she's like, yo, for a whole year we literally thought we killed somebody. And Ray is apologizing about the whole Billy Blue situation, and he's saying that he also seen the article about David's body being found and went to go visit Missy because he felt guilty. And he says that he didn't tell Julie about it because he didn't want to lose her again, and that he wants to get back together. And I don't know if I can move past that, because I'm like, bro, you literally sat there and watched us go page by page on this Southport yearbook trying to find Billy Blue, knowing that he didn't fucking exist, instead of saving everybody time and being like, look, I'm Billy Blue. But I do understand that Barry was also really adamant that Ray was the killer, and I guess that would have made him look bad. But I'm like, you also weren't contributing and helping. All he did was call them vigilantes. And so the sheriff approaches Julie and Ray and he's like, do you have any idea why this man would want to kill you? And they said nope. And I'm like, fair enough, fair enough. I feel like I would have probably said no as well, because it's like, at that point, what can you do? The cops are trying to find Ben's body, but they can't. All they found was his severed hand holding a hook. And when I tell you, I would have spent the whole rest of my life searching the sea for Ben Willis, because I'm like, we're not doing this shit again. We're not doing round 2 of this. So it's sometime later, Julie is back in college and she's getting ready to take a shower. She's on the phone with Ray. It seems like things are going really well between them. And the community showers at her college seem kind of lit. Like, she turns on the shower, the whole room fills with steam. She sees "I Still Know" written in condensation on the shower door, and then Ben Willis breaks through the glass, which I can only assume this to be a hallucination of sorts, because the person that jumps through the glass appears to have 2 hands, and as we know, that is not the case for Ben Willis. And it could have been a prosthetic, I suppose. Just based on his vibe, I've said this before, I'm an empath. I kind of feel like Ben Willis would be the type of man to like put a hook and be like, you know, oh my gosh, like I said, in hindsight, they really should have checked his wallet, because you know how much time that they would have saved if they seen that the man that they hit and dumped was Ben Willis. Then David Egan wouldn't even have been a thought at all. They would have easily been able to see that Ben Willis was still alive. This whole them not finding the body business would have had me so pissed off. I would have like, y'all need to be working on this day and night. Like, y'all need to find this man. And also, let me know if I'm tripping. I just kind of feel like Missy feels too much of like a loose end for me. Like, I feel like that's something that they should have approached as well, because imagine being Missy. You got Billy Blues coming in your life. You got girls coming up to you talking about some, look at this yearbook. I was the one who killed your brother. Like, I would, if I was Missy, I would absolutely have questions about that. But I don't know if she was just content with them leaving her life forever and ever and her going on about her business. And now to the sequel, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. The following year, Julie is in college and she is struggling. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bring It On and how the movie always starts with our main character having a nightmare and then waking up screaming in the middle of class, or waking up screaming in general. This is what happens to Julie. She has a dream about Ben Willis and wakes up screaming her head off in her poli-sci, and okay, cornrows. But yes, she's screaming her head off in her poli-sci class, and she ends up dismissing herself from the class, and her friend Will follows behind her to comfort her. And we'll find that Julie's current group of friends are aware of Ben Willis, and they're aware of last summer, but they're not aware of the summer before last summer, where her and her friends hit him and dumped his body into the sea. Will is comforting Julie, and he's telling her that she must be under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress because the anniversary of the whole Ben Willis situation is approaching. And Julie, in my opinion, is being a little too friendly with Will, and I just don't know any circumstance where I would need to touch somebody's face the way that she's touching his face, unless it was like, my man, my man, my man. And at first we're like, is this her new man? Did her and Ray not go the distance? And our question is immediately answered as Julie is approaching her apartment dorm. Ray is there to visit her, and he has clocked the Will tea, and he's like, who is that? And Julie's like, oh no, he's just a friend, tee. And Ray kind of just laughs it off. Ray is telling Julie to get ready for July 4th because he wants to take her back to Crokerland, as they call it, or Southport. And he's like, we're gonna go to the Croker parade, we're gonna go to the pageant, we're gonna go to Ollie's oyster bar. Julie is looking at him like, what the fuck? And I'm also looking at Ray like, what the fuck? Because I'm like, were you not at Southport these past 2 4th of Julys? Do you not remember what happened? Julie basically tells Ray that she does not feel healed enough to go back to Southport yet. And she explains that it's not him, but it's just Southport in general. And Julie suggests that they stay in Boston and do fireworks and stuff there. Ray is basically telling Julie that his boat is in Southport and he has to work. And then he like gets like offended and takes it very personally that she doesn't want to go back. And he's like, I get it. You want to break from Crokerland and you want to break from me. And then he runs off. Like, no goodbye, no anything. Julie is yelling after Ray, but like I said, he skedaddles off. Julie goes upstairs to her apartment, and baby girl is actually really just scared. She has like hella locks on her door, more than the average cookie would. Julie is very clearly upset about the conversation that she had with Ray. She's looking at a picture of Helen on her nightstand, and she lays down to take a nap with her outside clothes on, and it's like, to each their own, but something about that makes my brain itch a little. I just can't imagine getting in bed with like full jeans on. The thought of laying in bed with denim on is really just frustrating for me. So Julie wakes up from her nap, it's dark, and we hear the front door slam. And so Julie got that thing on her, and by that thing, I mean a kitchen knife in her nightstand. She grabs a knife and she's investigating the apartment. We see somebody run behind her in a way that is just not necessary or appropriate. Julie ends up making it back into her bedroom and sees that there is somebody in her closet, and it is her roommate, Belinda. I'm kidding, that's not her roommate's name. Her roommate is Carla, but have y'all seen the front room? I can only assume Carla was there sleeping when Julie got in, because there's no way she got in to that apartment with all those goddamn bolt locks. Oh my god, Julie consistently having black roommates is sending me. I imagine she filled out a roommate questionnaire with the university, and one of the questions is like, what do you look for in a roommate? And Julie was like, melanin and micro braids, maybe Fulani braids. Julie is confiding in Carla, and she's basically telling Carla that she feels that she hurt Ray's feelings, and we find out that Carla is not Team Ray at all. She does not like Ray, and even worse, she's trying to set Julie up with Will. And we love Carla, but damn. Carla works at a nightclub and she invites Julie to go with her, and that is where we meet Ty, Carla's boyfriend. And apparently Carla also invited Will, and so Will is there and he offers to get Julie a drink. Julie is looking around and we see somebody there wearing a slicker, which it's like, I can see if you want to wear something like that if you're going for like a Coraline type of vibe, but at the club, we all killers. But seeing this has Julie discouraged, and so she goes home. The following morning, Julie and Carla are up and they receive a phone call from Mark in the Morning, which is, I guess, like a popular radio host in their area. And he's calling them because the radio station does, like, I guess, a quickie getaway where the contestant has to answer a question correctly and they get a getaway trip. So the question that they have to get right is, what is the capital of Brazil? Mark in the Morning on the phone is counting down. Carla and Julie are like struggling trying to find the answer, and ultimately they give him the answer Rio, which he says is correct. Now I know, you know, we know, but you know, let's continue on with the plot. And so they won 4 tickets to Tower Bay Island in the Bahamas for the 4th of July weekend. And Carla says that she's of course going to invite her boyfriend Ty, and she invites Julie, her best friend and roommate, and she says that leaves 1 ticket left. Who are we going to invite? And of course, Julie is like, duh, my man, Ray. Julie calls Ray while he's at work, and Ray is telling her that he's happy that she called and he apologizes, which I'm like, he was the one that stormed off. Why didn't he call and apologize? But you know, we're here now. So Julie is basically inviting Ray to the Bahamas, and she's like, I think this will be good for us. We can hook up, we can hang out, we can just chill. And Ray is literally offended, and he's like, oh, so you'll go out of town with your friends, but you won't go out of town with me? Again, Julie has to explain that she just didn't want to go to Southport. Reasonably so. They didn't even find Ben Willis's body, and all of that crazy shit happened the summer before. Like, you would think he would understand that, but he doesn't. Ray tells Julie that he can't make it because he has to work, and Julie tells him to please try to take off work. And he says that he'll try, but no promises. And if anything, she should just go with her friends. Ray gets off the phone with Julie, and his coworker Dave has heard the entire conversation, and he's looking at Ray like, what is your problem? He's like, work is slow, just go be with your girl in the Bahamas. It's the Bahamas. And Ray reveals that he wants to propose to Julie. And I'm like, damn, bro. I'm like, you have a real funny way of showing it. And maybe he just got nervous and psyched himself out and started creating problems where there weren't any problems. I don't know. And Ray tells Dave, like, yeah, you're right. Let me call her back. And Dave says, no, don't call her back. Surprise her, which in hindsight, he should not have done. But Ray agrees to surprise her, and Dave tells Ray that he can tag along with him on his drive to Boston because he wants to visit some people in Cambridge. Ray and Dave are driving, they're on their road trip, whatever you want to call it, and they see an accident in the middle of the road, and Ray goes to investigate. And this is why we like Dave for the very short time that we know him. And Dave gets into the driver's seat because he feels that something is off. But Ray goes to investigate the accident. He looks and sees that it's not a person laid out in the middle of the street, but it's a dummy. And he realizes now that it's a setup. He turns back to look at the truck, and there is a gentleman in a slicker or killer, and then he kills Dave. The killer gets into the car and proceeds to drive Ray off the road. Now Ray is knocked out and injured. So the next morning, Carla and Julie are packed, ready to go to the Bahamas and waiting to see if Ray is going to show up. And this is why, in hindsight, I wish he would have called her back and at least sounded more hopeful and been like, hey, like, I'm gonna call you first thing in the morning, no guarantees, but I'm really gonna try and I love you. Instead, he just kind of left things the way that they were. I would hope that my rapport with my significant other is a good one. I would hope if something like this were to happen, where basically they're in Julie's position, where they're calling me, trying to contact me, trying to see if I'm joining the trip, it would be like, this is not baby girl's behavior at all. I need to go investigate. All we've seen of Ray so far is him being really defensive and him literally running and leaving. Carla basically tells Julie, like, he's not coming. You've called him 4 times. He hasn't answered. Like, it is what it is. And then Ty pulled up with Will, and Carla is apologizing to Julie, but she was saying that Will is also her friend and that she didn't want the ticket to go to waste. So one plane ride and one boat ride later, Julie, Carla, Ty, and Will are now on the island and at the resort. Oh my gosh, I don't know if you've ever had that moment where there's a song that you loved and you completely forgot it fucking existed, and then you find it again. I literally had this moment rewatching the movie and seeing this scene where they're walking onto the island and Estaro's That Girl is playing.
Hey, look at that girl.
I nearly lost my shit. So they're at the resort. We meet Titus and his Grinch finger locks. And oh my god, we love the American sweetheart, Jack Black. It seems that he lives on the island and he's like trying to sell them weed, but they're not interested. They kind of just brush him off. And once they're inside of the hotel, they meet Mr. Brooks, who is an asshole. You can tell that he really doesn't like that they are there. Brooks tells the group that they'll be staying in rooms 201 and 202. And he kind of has a bit of a weird reaction when he's telling them this, but then just goes on to explain that it's the honeymoon suites. We also find out that it is the off season for the island, meaning there's like no staff, there's no people there, there is nobody on that island except for them and the off season staff. And Brooks explains this to be like their winter time because it's hurricane season. So people obviously don't want to stay there. They make it up to their rooms and we meet Estes. Estes is a part of the hotel staff and he's bringing them their keys and their luggage. And he also seems to be surprised that they're staying in rooms 201 and 202. Estes goes on to explain that he was just shocked that, you know, young people were staying in the honeymoon suite. Carla explains that they won a contest and all they had to do was name the capital of Brazil, Rio. So Carla tells Estes to put her bags in the room with Ty because they're going to be sleeping in the same room together, and that Will and Julie will be in the same room together. Julie is obviously very uncomfortable with this arrangement, and if I were Carla, like, it's like I get that her man is there, but I feel like I would have just been like, the girls are going to room together. It's not that deep. They have the whole island to themselves. They'll have time to do whatever couple things, you know what I mean, that they want to do in their own time. Or honestly, they could have asked to downgrade Julie and Will's room from a honeymoon suite to a room with 2 beds. Meanwhile, Ray is in the hospital. He ends up leaving and he finds a payphone and he's trying to call the resort to contact Julie. But he calls, of course, there's no answer. Back at the Bahamas, Julie and Carla are on their way to the bar to meet with the boys. Julie is talking about how great Will is and how cute Will is, but she's saying that she still misses Ray. Girl, you need to lock in. At least leave your relationship before starting to look elsewhere because this is crazy. But of course, Carla does not like Ray, so she's encouraging Julie to be with Will. And she also confirms that Will has a crush on Julie. So Julie and Carla get to the bar. Will and Ty are already there, and there's literally nobody else there other than the bartender, Nancy. So the group ends up doing karaoke, and Julie is singing, and she looks at the little TV for the lyrics. It's not lyrics to a song, but it says, "I still know what you did last summer." So naturally, Julie freaks the fuck out, but nobody else sees the message, so she kind of just is like, okay, it was nothing, and goes back up to her room. Julie is in her room, and we see a note with her name on it, and she opens a letter, and it says, "Surprise," and behind her is Will, and he has like champagne and flowers for her. This scares Julie. Like, I think she was just surprised, and Will drops everything, and Julie is apologizing, and I would have been like, we actually need to get a different room because now this is disrespecting my relationship. Yes, we all know that Ray was acting like an asshole in the beginning, but still, this is not cool. This is not it. But Will grabs some of his stuff and leaves the room to Julie. Next door, we hear Carla and Ty moaning and groaning, and literally it's just Carla jumping on the bed, and I thought that that was really cute and wholesome. And so while all of this is going down, Derek the dockhand gets murdered. The maid staff gets murdered. People are getting murdered already on this island. So then cut back to Ty and Carla, and they're in the jacuzzi trying to have a little alone time, you know, kissing and splashing and whatnot. And they're like having sexy talk. And Ty tells Carla that they're miles away from everybody so nobody can hear her scream. Immediately, I would have been like, is that a fucking threat? And their weird ass sexy talk is interrupted by Titus, and then Titus goes away, and then their weird ass sexy talk is then interrupted by Will, and Will is down and out because he's like, I don't know what to do about Julie. And Carla tells him to keep his head up and to keep trying. Julie is in the honeymoon suite, and she gets out the shower, and just as she notices that her toothbrush is missing, we see the killer walk behind her. So Julie starts to hear creaking coming from the closet. She goes to investigate the closet. It looks normal at first, but then she sees that there's blood dripping from the ceiling, and then the dockhand Derek the dockhand, falls down. He's dead. Derek the dead dockhand. deceased. Julie leaves the room. She's screaming. She's trying to find Will, and she's like, oh my gosh, it's happening again. And everybody goes into the honeymoon suite, and Brooks is there to investigate, and there is no body in the closet.
Thinking about so many things. I just wish things would get better.
Mr. Brooks, or should I say Mr. Bitch, refuses to use the radio to call the mainland because Julie wants out. Julie's like, just get me off this island. I want to go to the mainland. The phones are down, and the only way they can contact anybody is a radio. And like I said, Mr. Bitch is not willing to use the radio because he says it's for emergencies only. He goes on to say, I knew you would be troubled. Y'all are just a bunch of spoiled city rich kids giving me problems. And I'm like, fucking relax. Like, I can see if Julie did all of this, like screaming her fucking head off, called everybody into the room, and was like, the thread count on these sheets? Unacceptable. I want to go back to the mainland. But no, she's seen a dead body. Later on that night, Titus is in his headquarters, gandering at his ganja garden, and he sits down to smoke said ganja and gets murdered. Cut back to Ray, bless his heart. He's still injured, and he pawns Julie's engagement ring and gets a gun. Ray makes his way to the Bahamas. He gets to the mainland. He uses said gratatata to threaten it's like a boat owner and the guy who manages the boats, and he basically is like, give me a boat because I need to go save my girl. So the next morning in the hotel, it is storming, and everybody is not only sleeping in the same room, but they are sleeping in the same bed. And I honestly cannot blame them. Same. We would have definitely done the exact same thing. Unless we confirmed that the killer was specifically targeting Julie, I would be like, maybe we should consider quarantining. We can give her a quarantini in her quarantine room and just have her kind of sectored off away from the rest of us who would like to live and survive. Ty is giving Julie a really hard time, and he's upset with her because he's like, we gotta hold her hand the whole trip, and he does not believe that there was a body there. And Julie is like not blaming him at all for him being in disbelief. I don't blame him either, but I'm like, honestly, the trip was already doomed when y'all plan to invite Julie, who has a boyfriend, and Will, who has a crush on Julie. Like, I'm like, this is the worst possible two-man that there could have ever been. Like, there was gonna be drama on this trip regardless if there was a killer or not. So Carla is locking in as a good friend, and she tells Ty to go hang out with Will while her and Julie go to the gym for some girl time. And Carla reassures Julie that nobody thinks that she's crazy. Carla and Julie get to the gym, and Julie is very clearly not vibing, so Carla suggests that she rest in the tanning bed, and immediately shit pops off. Carla finds a deceased maid in the dryer. Julie, in her tanning bed, gets a visit from the killer, and he zip ties the tanning bed clothes, turns up the heat. Ty and Will are looking for Titus, and oh boy, do they find him. You know, dead. All of this seems to be happening simultaneously. Ty and Will hear Julie and Carla screaming. And so they make it to Carla first, and Carla seems to be trapped, but she's really not trapped. Like, she tries to take the first exit that's by her, which is locked, instead of just going back the way that she came. And Julie is screaming her head off, which also same, because the way that my claustrophobias, like, I would be freaked out too. I do have a question. So I noticed that the killer turned the tanning bed up. Do tanning beds get like that hot, like for real, where it's like if you're in there long enough, you're burning? Because I feel like he did that with intention. Like, I don't think he just did that for no reason. They end up breaking the tanning bed open, and then the four of them run to Mr. Brooks' office to get the radio. They go into Mr. Brooks' office. The radio is broken, and so is Mr. Brooks, as he has also been murdered. And on the wall of Mr. Brooks' office in blood says, I still know. Julie knows exactly what's going on, so she runs to the dock. Everybody's following her. It's raining out. They all notice that the boats are gone. There are no boats for them to escape. She's like, Ben Willis is doing this, and Carla's like, no, like, you killed Ben Willis. It's fine. And she was like, no, they never found the body. And Carla is looking at her like, no fucking way. This bitch did not tell me the full story. Julie goes on to explain what happened 2 summers ago when her and her friends dumped his body. This is the first time that everybody is hearing the full story of what happened. And Ty, for some reason, is not convinced that it's Ben Willis. He's convinced that it's Estes. So he's looking for Estes. Everybody follows behind him, and they find Estes's headquarters. And while they're in Estes's room, they check this closet, and it has like a personal item from each of them. including Julie's missing toothbrush. And so now they're all convinced that he's doing some sort of voodoo. So they go back to the main part of the hotel, and Ty and Will go into the kitchen to look for weapons, leaving Julie and Carla out in the front. The power goes out, and Julie walks over to this beautiful big ass globe, and she sees the capital of Brazil is in fact not Rio. And as she sees this, Estes pops up behind her and says the capital of Brazil is Brasilia. Ty and Will run out, and immediately they're putting hands on Estes. And Julie is like stopping them, and she's like, no, he's not the one that's doing this. She, because she still believes it to be Ben Willis. And she says that if he wanted to kill me, he would have killed me, but he didn't. And Ty is like, no, like we seen his room. He had all that stuff in there. And Estes explains that he had that there because he wanted to protect them, which is so sweet. Because if I would have clocked that tea, I would have left. I would have left the island. And Julie explains that the entire trip and everything was a setup because they didn't even get the contest question correct. Estes says that he knows who Ben Willis is and said that he used to work at the hotel years ago. And he confirms that he recently seen Ben Willis on the island, and he's like, he goes off into the woods and he said, come with me, I can show you. And so they all agree to go with him. And then we get some Ben Willis lore. Like I said, Ben worked at the hotel. He lived there. He had a family there. He had a wife and 2 children, a boy and a girl. At some point, his wife went missing, and the hotel staff found that the honeymoon suite, room 201, which is why everybody was freaking the fuck out that they were staying in rooms 201 and 202, but it's really just 201, was covered in blood. They eventually found parts of his wife's body. And Estes goes on to say that there are rumors that he beat his wife and that she cheated on him. And so they're walking further into the woods until they come across a graveyard. It's like hardly a graveyard, more like a grave flower bed. There's only 2 graves there, that of Ben Willis's wife and Susie Willis. And there's an empty grave, and it has Julie's name written on it. And Julie asks for the current date, and Carla confirms that it is July 4th. And one thing about Julie hands out James, she gonna put her hands out and yell at Ben Willis. At some point, Estes steps off away from the group, and Will notices and says that he's gonna go find Estes because he believes that he can help them. And Julie, Ty, and Carla go back to the hotel. Will goes to find Estes and sees that Estes is at a boat. And at this point, everybody thought that all the boats were gone. And Estes mollywops the fuck out of Will with a paddle. Like I said, Ty, Julie, and Carla are in the hotel. They're getting like kitchen knives and stuff, like little steak knives and stuff to be able to defend themselves. And Carla has the nerve and audacity to hold what looks to be a steak knife and a butter knife. I'm like, girl, lock in. Ty is basically comforting Julie, and he's like, don't worry, we're gonna find him and everything's gonna be okay. Out pops Nancy, and she's freaking out, and she attacks Ty by mistake. So now the 4 of them are just like talking in the kitchen. Nancy is saying that she, found all the dead bodies, and she wasn't sure if they had an involvement in that. He's like, I've never seen a dead body before. And then here goes fucking Julie, well, get used to it. I'm like, bitch, this is all happening because of you, and you're telling me to get used to it instead of being like, I'm so sorry I brought this here into your workplace. Fix it. Ty is going on a little monologue about how he's hungry and how he wants to have sex and how he hasn't even seen the killer, and then immediately gets killed. Julie, Carla, and Nancy are running through the hotel. Ben is hot on their trail, and they end up in the attic. You can see from the attic that there's a perfect view of Julie's room. Ladies are in the attic. They're running on the beams, and Carla, bless her heart, her leg falls through. Ben Willis is now in the attic, and they both fall into one of the rooms. And Carla, quick on her feet, has a bit of a parkour moment. She runs out the hotel room, out of the balcony. She jumps over and lands on a greenhouse. And unfortunately, she falls through. And Nancy and Julie are seeing all of this, and Nancy is like, we need to leave her, forget her, like she's doomed, she's done, she's a goner. And Julie said, bitch, we're not finna have a Helen part 2. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna go save my girl. So they make it downstairs, and there's 2 entrances to the greenhouse. One entrance is where Julie and Nancy are. That side is chained and locked. On the other side is Ben Willis. And so he's slowly walking towards Carla, and Carla is trying to escape, and Nancy has all these keys trying to get it unlocked. And Julie says, move out the way. And she gets an axe and breaks a window. And a great day to be a skinny legend, because Carla fits through this window, and then the 3 of them run. And so Nancy leads them to like an emergency power source. And they're in this room. Things have calmed down quite a bit since they were able to escape Ben Willis. So Julie tells Carla to hold her hand. She has her axe. She's really feeling herself. She said, I'm gonna protect us. And so she has her axe and she's telling Carla, hold my hand. And Carla's like, I'm holding your hand. Julie turns around and she's like, girl, you're not holding my hand. Nancy gets the light on and Carla is holding the hand of one of the deceased maids and there's bodies everywhere. So they're screaming, they're freaking out. And then Will pops up and Will is like, Estes tried to attack me. We need to go back to the hotel. He's like, I seen Ben on the beach, so we should be safe inside the hotel. So the four of them are inside the hotel and Julie notices that Will is covered in blood. And she's like, oh my God, we need a first aid kit. Nancy is like, okay, there should be one up front. I'll go get it. And Carla joins her. If I were Julie, I'd be like, Carla, you stay here. Nancy can go by herself because she was literally going to leave you back there to be killed by Ben Willis. So let's think about that. But nonetheless, Nancy and Carla go up to the front, leaving Julie with Will. Julie is assessing Will's wounds, except there aren't any. And Julie is like, I can't find the wound. And Will is like, it's not my blood, Julie. I said, oh my God, that shit creeped me out real bad. That shit creeped me out real bad. And so Julie realizes the creepy ass tone in Will's voice and she like looks up at him and he's just smiling at her. I was like, Julie, get out of there. And then Will proceeds to start doing his Mark in the Morning impression because apparently he was the one that made the phone call. Other words, setting them all up to be on this island to get killed. And then he grabs Julie and starts dragging her to the woods. And I hate to say it, but Will ate that shit up. Meanwhile, Nancy and Carla are in the front looking for the first aid kit. They find the first aid kit and then Estes pops up and it seems that Estes has been pierced with, I can only assume to be a nautical tool. And poor Estes, he ends up falling on Nancy, and then Ben Willis turns the corner and uses the nautical tool to pierce through Nancy. So Nancy is down for the count, and he starts to chase Carla, and Carla ends up falling on like, I guess like a glass bookcase. She kind of falls through it, and that's all we see of them. Meanwhile, Julie is still being dragged through the woods, and I hear in situations like this, which also keep in mind, I'm pretty sure Will had a weapon on her, which is why she couldn't do this, but you're supposed to like go limp, like you're supposed to dead weight. You're not supposed to struggle, because if you struggle, I guess like the person trying to take you is getting more momentum. It actually makes it easier for them as opposed to just like going limp. I was like, you can drag me, but you're gonna be tired by the time we get to our destination. So Will drags her all the way to the little grave site that they were at before, and Julie is like, bro, what the fuck is your problem? Like what is happening right now? Will is like, come on. He's like, you know this. He's like, I'm Will Benson. And she's like, the fuck does that mean? And he's like, Ben's son. Benson. So speak of the devil, Ben pops up behind her and he tells Julie it's time to die. He said, count your days. You have none left. It's right here, right now. Me, you, and this hook. You're about to get it. And so Ray pops up. He has his little gun. He's ready to use it. The gun is jammed. So the gun is jammed. Will charges Ray and they're fighting. And, you know, Ray gets some good hits in, but keep in mind, he's injured, okay? So he ends up getting knocked out by Will, and Ben tells Will, stand him up. So Will is holding Ray up. And just as Ben is about to strike with his hook, Ray elbows Will in the face, moves out of the way, and then Ben accidentally strikes Will. So then here comes Julie with the gun. She's gratatatong, she's shooting Ben, and no headshots, they're all body shots. And Ben ends up falling into the grave that was initially intended for Julie. And then the grave starts to fill up with mud and water, and that's it. Like that's literally it. And when I tell you, after last summer's situation, I would have jumped in there. I would have smothered him. I would have done something, anything to not let this shit happen again. But that does not happen. Julie and Ray go back to the resort. It's now morning, the sun is up, the storm is gone, and now the Coast Guard is there, just late as fuck after everybody's been killed and dragged through the woods. And we see that Carla survived, which we love that, but Carla is over here cracking jokes, and she's like, let's not tell everybody it rained the whole time. If I was Julie, I was like, bitch, ain't shit funny right now. Ty is dead, everybody's dead. I'm tired. Too much is going on. Sometime later, it seems that Julie and Ray have moved into a new home and they're getting ready for bed. And we see that Julie has a wedding ring. So I think at this point they're married. And Julie has this creepy ass teddy bear. Oh my God. I don't know what it is about the shot of this teddy bear that feels just off to me, but it just feels off. And so Ray is in the bathroom and he's brushing his teeth. The door for some reason closes on its own. So Julie gets up and she's like kind of checking one of the rooms in the house and closes the window. And we see that there's muddy footprints leading into the house from the window. And I guess she didn't notice. And so she's sitting like on the edge of the bed and she's looking at the mirror across from her. And we get this, like I said, this creepy ass image of this creepy ass bear. And she's staring at the mirror and then sees Ben Willis underneath the bed. And then he grabs her with a hook and drags her underneath. And that's how the movie ends. I will say the movie's ending like this with like the little Ben Willis jump scares. I remember the first time that I seen the movie, I really was upset because in the sequel, they didn't mention it. Like they didn't mention that Julie had a nightmare. They didn't really acknowledge the end of part 1 at all. And I remember being frustrated by that. But then I was like, with part 2, I was like, okay, it's kind of cute. It's kind of like the franchise's little, it's like their thing. There's going to be another installment this summer, or I think it's July actually it comes out, if I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's like a little reboot, similar to what they did with like the Scream franchise, where it's like they have like a new cast, but they have like the old cast members too. And what I'm hoping for is that it has zero correlation with I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. That's like technically like the 3rd installment of the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise. I've never seen it. I tried watching it for the sake of this video, but I just couldn't. I'm wondering too if Ben Willis is going to be coming back in the 2025 I Know What You Did Last Summer. I haven't seen the trailer just because when it comes to movies, like I tried to avoid trailers as much as possible. I've only seen like little images and little clips of Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr., but I have no clue what it's going to be about or what's going on at all. But hopefully Ben Willis isn't making a return, because I'm like, bro, how much more can you lose? And what is your damage, honestly? Because for me, if I had murdered somebody and gotten away with it, and the same night I was hit by a car and left for dead and I survived, I would probably be like, that was probably my karma for the evening, given that I just murdered somebody. Julie and her friends weren't interested in finding out who it was that they dumped. Like, he could have literally lived his life and lived a normal life. But no, he had to get revenge, which it's like, I get that. But I'm like, bro, how much more can you lose right now? It's like, Ben, you go back to get your revenge, you lose a hand, then you go back to get revenge again, and then you lose your son. Like, maybe you should just sit the fuck down, because these kids are fucking you up. But not knowing that Ben had a son did make for a good plot twist. The article from part 1, I Know What You Did Last Summer, when Julie is looking up the surviving family members of Susie Willis, we only see Ben Willis. We don't really see anything about a brother. For a majority of the movie, we're like, okay, obviously this has got to be Ben going after them. But then the whole thing with Will kind of just took a turn, because I honestly didn't see that coming. He gave me a bad vibe. I know that for certain. I didn't fuck with him at all. Like, he kind of gave me like creepy vibes already. But then the bad vibes were confirmed when he revealed he was in cahoots with his father. I am curious what they are going to do for the 2025 version of I Know What You Did Last Summer, only because I'm like, is it going to be Ben Willis? Is Ben Willis going to be like a Michael Myers, where he just doesn't die, he just keeps coming back over and over again? I don't know. We'll see. But that is all that I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And I hope that you and your friends don't hit somebody and try to dump their body. Okay, bye!